What's going down, everybody? Welcome back to another art tutorial. Today we're going to look at this Sol Ring, and we're going to look at my basic technique for base coating cards. Now this one's a little bit interesting because I'm choosing to do the entire base coat in a light color, which is a little bit atypical. Usually I'll do my base coats either in black for a Space Odyssey type piece where I do like a constellation behind part of the original art, or I'll start with a darker color and over the course of the base coat lighten up the color as I go. I'm not doing that because I'm actually using a new metallic green and a new neon yellowish green that you can see here. So let's get started. You've got it all there. The Stedler marker. It's permanent, it's light fast, paint sticks to it really well. I really like it. It's got a chisel tip. We've got my 3 paint brushes that I use in the base coat today. We'll talk about those when I get to them, and the Sol Ring. So let's hit it. I start by covering this card completely with the Stedler marker. I go around as tight as I can without actually getting anything on the name line. And you're going to see I actually change my mind in how I do it. But I start my base coat, everything gets blacked out, and that gives me a solid surface to paint onto. And then I start to mix the color I want. There's the neon yellow, there's the new metallic green. I add some water with the end of my brush, and then I just go to town. And I didn't really have a color in mind that I wanted, but I knew I wanted it to be metallic greeny yellowy, for lack of a better term. So I added some hands of yellow because it wasn't yellow enough, and I added some teal because it wasn't quite blue enough. So here I go, and I quickly discovered that brush wasn't going to work with the pigment in this paint. That's why I say I usually start with dark colors and go lighter and lighter. So instead of layering it on super thin like I normally do, I decided to get a little bit, I'm going to say chunkier, even though the paint isn't thicker or any more textured, even though it looks like it is. This technique where I'm just tapping with my worn out number 6 flat chisel brush does put it down a little bit thicker, for lack of a better term. And you can see how I'm just tapping the end of the brush onto it. So I go back to my long bristle brush that I used to do a lot of my base coating, and it still wasn't working. So back to the chisel brush and back to tapping it on just a little bit thicker. This was quite a battle, and it took probably as long as doing an entire altar just to base coat with these light yellows and greens. They just don't cover very well. Oranges and reds are the same. The pigment is very bright, but it isn't very dense within the actual emulsion or the acrylic liquid that the pigment is suspended in. So coat after coat after coat, drying time, drying time, drying time. Not typical, but this does demonstrate maybe how long it takes to do a light colored base coat or undercoat solid like this. If I was doing black or gray or brown or even white, believe it or not, it doesn't take quite as long. And if I was going to do this exact same color again, I'd probably start with doing it white and then introducing greens and yellows as I go. So we're getting to a place where it's starting to look good. I make sure to go both ways with my brush strokes, vertical and side to side, just to avoid lines and streaks as much as I can, and thicker streak marks. You could pull the previous streak marks across, and you can make sure you're filling all of the brush strokes by going the other way. So important to go both ways. What you don't see in these is I actually have a lamp that I stick the card under a little bit, and that does help with drying time. But you do have to be a little bit careful when you're covering the whole card like this, because the moisture in the paint will actually cause the card to warp, and you kind of have to hold the card firmly so it doesn't. And you can see here that I changed my mind, in the pin line around the name line, I actually went without. I thought it looked a little bit better like this. I don't usually do them like this, and it was just a little bit too hard to clean up off of the card stock with this new paint that I've never used before. So that's how I do it. It's coat after coat, dabbing, and then you can see right at the very end, I go back to my chisel brush that's worn out, and I do a little bit of just circle work and just smoothing everything out while it's still damp. And that does give it a nice flat look at the end, like in terms of the surface being flat. There's a little bit of a metallic sheen in there that you can't really see on camera, but it's there. It looks really good.